Hi everybody, in this video we're going to cover some methods for protecting the email address on your website from nasty spiders and crawlers that would love to do nothing more than to harvest your address and start stuffing your inbox with spam. While most of us would never shoot down the opportunity to get a message from an adoring fan or a potential client that wants to hire your services, most of us, unless you really have nothing better to do with your life, most of us would rather not be inundated with junk mail offers for fake mail order brides or magic pills that promise to make you look like a bodybuilder by the end of the day, or fishing expeditions from some delirious huckster in a basement in Siberia, pretending to be a billionaire prince in Nigeria who would love nothing more than to give you $5 million. If only you'll give him your credit card information. Now, of course, there's no completely foolproof way to guarantee that your spam box will stay crystal clean for eternity. But one way to ensure that it will be filled to the brim is to include a plain text email on your site. Now sure, maybe you're old school and you remember those days when users would highlight and copy your email address, then paste it into their email client. But that's hardly the way anyone does it these days. Even something slightly inconvenient spells a massive problem for your users in today's snap judgment, speed is everything world. Not to mention how incredibly annoying this would be to try and copy-paste on a mobile device. Plus, there are nefarious web crawlers that run around looking for email addresses in your code, so they can add it to their list for their spam bots. So, after running my site on SEO Site Checkup, I can see that I've been flagged here for having a plain text email in my site's HTML. Spam harvesters, come my way, I'm open for business. So let's click How to Fix to access some general tips for this issue, so I can make my address available to actual users and be contacted by potential friends and clients, but not by spamsters. Now first, note that the best way to go about doing this is to use a contact form and to use the post method within that form. This method keeps your email address itself completely out of the equation. This is a bit more involved if you're building it manually, so I'll go ahead and cover this method later in the video. First, let's look at some more options here. While it won't be a better experience for your users, in fact it will be even more slightly annoying, the quickest fix is to simply replace the @ and dot symbols with space @ space and literally spell out the word dot. Or do the same idea in brackets. Fast and furious, and this will help avoid most, though not all, spam harvesters. If bots out there are combing through your site's text to find email to or email at, then they might very well be programmed to convert those ats and .coms back into a spammable format. And again, this method is pretty inconvenient for users since they'll have to manually highlight, copy, paste, and then fix those symbols. Not ideal, but at least now you know the reason why you see that method pop up from time to time. One step up from this is to use the mail to hyperlink method. This will appear as a clean, easy to understand link to your site visitor, and with just one click, their default email client will launch so that they can quickly and easily write a message. Or if they don't use an email client, they can right-click, copy the address, and paste it into their browser. This method is much better for your site visitor, which is the most important thing, of course. But unfortunately, this does nothing to protect you from bots scouring the far reaches of the internet to find as many mail-tos as they can. But to go one step further with this, you can do some fancy trickery here and replace the @ and dot characters with text. Then add an on-click event that will substitute the symbols back in. A surefire way to avoid spam bots is to replace your email address with an image of your email address. There's no way a spam bot is going to be able to decipher that, at least in today's world. But unfortunately, it's also a surefire way to annoy your site visitors, since they'll have to manually type in your address. Not the end of the world, and you won't have people pounding the desk with their fists. But again, this isn't totally ideal. A quick and effective fix, though, may be something to consider if you're having real issues with email harvesters and you're overloaded with spam, something that will tide you over until you have time to implement a more involved, long-term solution. Another relatively easy method to implement within your HTML code is to obfuscate your email address with encoded characters. So here in my website's code, instead of mail to and my email address looking like this, it would look like this. Of course, for site visitors, when they browse my actual website, they'll see whatever link I'd like them to see, such as shoot me an email here. Now this isn't entirely spam safe either. Google's search engine and other advanced spam harvesting bots are able to re-encode this. but this will certainly help weed out a lot of the lesser sophisticated email harvesting bots and lighten the load on your spam filter. Keep in mind that most, though again certainly not all email harvesters, are pretty basic, a bit on the stupid side. So this is enough to avoid those. To get this encoding, we're simply converting the ASCII characters into decimal characters. You can do this easily by Googling email address encoder. We'll click on this first link, type in our email address, and encode. Copy this converted text, and paste it to replace it in our HTML code. Done. Not a bad, relatively simple solution that won't take much time. Another pretty good way of going about it is to replace your email address in your HTML with a PHP script. So my email us link here will direct to my mailhandler.php file. I'll just need to create that mailhandler PHP file and include the following script with my email address here. Spam bots won't see the address. Plus, let's say I have this email us link on all 16 pages of my site. If I need to change that email address, I just need to open up that PHP file and edit it once, and that will apply to all those 16 links across my site. There are also several ways to use CSS or JavaScript to throw harvesters off the trail. Generally speaking, bots are usually focused on combing the content of HTML. They usually don't bother with CSS or JavaScript files. So let's quickly look at some of the things we can do with CSS. For example, in this case, I have my email address on my web page, and to visitors it looks exactly as you would expect. But taking a look under the hood here, in my HTML, I've only got the @ symbol as the text. Then I'm using data user and data domain to refer to pseudo-style elements that come before and after that @ symbol, within my overall style element called email. And then in my CSS, I've got my email style. And after the text I'll be applying that style to, in this case the @ symbol, I'll use before and after to point them to data user and data domain. So in the end, for my site visitors, they get exactly what they expect, but all the spam harvesters see is the @ symbol. The same idea can be applied to reversing the text with CSS, or include some null spaces, which we can remove using display none in the CSS. These CSS tricks should do a pretty good job of weeding out most bots. Although users won't be able to click on this link and launch their email client. In each of these cases, they'll need to copy and paste the email address. By using JavaScript, there's a clever way to encode and decode your email address using rote or rotate 13. This is a method used to encrypt letters simply by rotating each letter forward by 13 characters. So an A becomes an N, a B becomes an O, a C becomes a P, and so on. The same principle as rote 5, which is used for numbers. At rote13.com, you can type in any text and have it encoded in an instant. Then we'll use a JavaScript function to decode it on our web page. The only downside is that JavaScript is required for this to work, but this should be plenty enough trickery to evade those pesky spam bots. And finally, let's cover the post method of creating a contact form, which is generally the ideal solution to evade email harvesters, while at the same time making it even easier for your site visitors to reach out to you. No need to copy and paste your email address, bounce over to their email client or another browser window, or any of that. Just pop in their email address so you can contact them back, write their message, and voila. Or you can even take this a step further and create a contact form that contains a drop-down menu, or maybe a checkbox that your site visitors can tick to sign up for your newsletter. Now, I won't lead you through the code line by line, but you'll be able to find plenty of code examples if you Google PHP post method contact form. But let me show you the basics of how this works. First, we're using the post method to check if the HTTP request is a form submission or not. Then, we'll want to check if all the required data is there, or if we need to return an error. For example, if someone hits the send button but hasn't actually written any message. Check to see if there's no error. Set the date and create the email template. set our from header, and enter in the actual email address we want these messages to go to. Then we'll close off this PHP section. All of this comes before the opening head tag of your HTML. Then in your HTML head section, we'll have the contact form itself, which you can style any way you like. The sky's the limit. This requires knowledge of CSS, and again, there are too many possibilities to cover here, so I'll just leave it at that. Then after the closing head tag, we'll have the HTML body, and the HTML code to use the post action. 2 variables to save error messages upon failure, and finally some display text for the site visitor once they send us a message through the contact form. In this case, your message was sent, we'll get back to you ASAP. Thanks. Now essentially what this is doing is setting up a form for users to input data. That data is collected, then composed into an email and sent to the configured email address. Collect the data, validate the data, send an email. If you're using WordPress, there are loads of plugins out there that will help you craft a contact form. Or if you're not using WordPress, there are dozens upon dozens of contact form solutions out there, a mixed bag of free or paid, if you're not comfortable writing the PHP file and using CSS to style your contact form. But of all the solutions to avoid spam harvesters, this post method is far and above the most effective. Feel free to check out our other videos so you can keep fine-tuning and getting the most out of your SEO. And click subscribe to stay updated with new tips and tricks to get you to the top of the search engine results pages.